Everybody, welcome back. Yesterday, we went through how to use guess and check in order to factor polynomials. Now remember, this only works when you have three terms. And if you think back to the day before, we also used factor by grouping to factor four terms. So when we look at factoring, our whole goal here is we want to rewrite the polynomial with four terms. That is our whole goal here, is we want to rewrite our polynomial with four terms because then we can go ahead and group it up like we were doing a couple days ago. So the key here is you're asking yourself what two numbers multiply to give you C but add up to give you A. Well, it's great that I'm saying these letters, but what the heck is that? So we have this form right here. The way we look at it as AX squared plus BX plus C. And we like to think of it as an X. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an X out for a second. And the way we do this is we're going to multiply our first term times our last term. So what is y squared times 18? Yep, it makes an 18y squared sandwich. That's what number goes on top. And you see that middle number right here, plus 11y? That's what goes right here. It's a positive 11y. And so the whole thing that we're looking for now is to figure out what two numbers will multiply to give us 18, but add up to be 11y. So we look at the 18 and we ask ourselves, how can I multiply to get 18? Well, I have 1 times 18, I have 2 times 9, and I have 3 times 6. So I have to be able to either add or subtract these to get to 18. So if I do 1 plus 18, that gives me 19. So if I add those guys up, it gives me 19. I'm looking for 11, so that is not what I'm looking for. That's not my pair. So I'm going to go to my next pair. I have 2 and 9. So if I add those up, what's 2 plus 9 give me? Oh, hey, check it out. It gives me 11, which means two of my factors, I have a 2 and I have a 9. But remember, they have to multiply to give y squared. So both of these have a y with them. So now what do I do with this? This is great, but now what? So I'm going to go back to my original problem. You see how I circled y squared in black? I'm going to write it down. But in this red area right here, remember those two factors here in the middle? That is what I'm going to write in my problem. Instead of saying plus 11y, I'm going to say, how do I add to get it? A positive 2y and a positive 9y. And then finally, remember that 18 I circled, my plus 18? Sorry about the colors. My plus 18, that goes in the end. Now that I went ahead and found my factors, I can group it up. Divide your problem in half, underline, squiggle. What can I divide both y squared and y by? You guessed it, a y. So that y gets written out front, and I rewrite. Y squared over y gives me y. 2y over y, okay, well, the 2 stays there, but my y that I had is now gone. And now I go to my second part of the equation. What can I divide both 9 and 18 by? Good job, I can divide them both by 9. And remember that sign in the middle is positive, so this is plus 9. I'm going to write down a plus 9 in the middle and divide. Well, I had 9y, but I just divided out that 9, so I'm left with just y. 18 divided by 9 is, good job, positive 2. Hey, remember with grouping, if we have matching parentheses, we did something right. So my first parenthesis is going to be y plus 2. My second parenthesis is all of that junk. So I have a y on the outside and a plus 9. Now, if I were to go through and box this out, I would end up back where I started. Okay, I know this is a little confusing. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to write the parentheses for letter B, so you can go back and get some more practice. So when you factor this out correctly, you should have x plus 2 times x plus 4. So go back and see if you can work on your grouping practice for that one. However, I'm going to go ahead and move on to letter C. So looking at letter C, again, I'm going to start with my x factor. So here's my x factor. And I have to multiply my first term a times my second term c. So what is x squared times 15? Right, 15x squared. And what number is in the middle? Be careful with your sign here. Now we have a negative 8x. All right, let's think about that for a minute. Let's first look at the 15. So in what ways can I multiply to get 15x squared? Okay, well, 1x times 15x will give me 15x squared. Okay. Oh yeah, 3x times 5x gives me 15x squared. Are there any other ways? No, no other ways. Okay. Now here's where we have to do some thinking. A little bit of thinking involved here. I need two numbers that multiply to be a positive 15 but add up to be a negative. So there's only two ways to get a positive number when you multiply. Either you're going to have a positive and a positive, or you're going to have a negative and a negative. Well, if I'm looking to add up to be a negative number, both of these numbers must be negative. So now looking at my pairs of numbers here, which ones will combine together to give me negative 8? Well, negative 1 minus 15 gives me negative 16x. Yeah, that's not my right factors. But negative 3 minus 5 does give me negative 8x. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Ding, 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 ding. I got my terms, negative 3x and negative 5x. So now I take those and bring it back to my problem. Remember that x squared, I'm going to write it down. But instead of saying negative 8x, I'm going to say those two numbers that combine together to give me negative 8. So minus 3x minus 5x. And then finally in the end, I have a positive 15. Great job. So now that I have this set up, I can jump straight to the underline squiggles, the grouping. So underline, squiggle. Looking at the first half, what do they both have in common? You guessed it, they both have an x. So when I divide out that x squared over x is just x. Good job. Negative 3x over x is negative 3. Now I'm going to go to my second half. Oh no, I have a negative in the middle. I'm going to write it down. Now, 5 and 15, what can I divide them both by? You guessed it, a 5. So minus 5. And then when I divide this out, negative 5x over negative 5, well, those negative 5's cancel and I'm left with just x. Now watch your signs carefully. 15 divided by negative 5 is a negative 3. Because I watched my signs carefully, I can see now that both of my parentheses match, so I did something right. So x minus 3 is my duplicated parenthesis. All that outside junk makes up the second one. So what's in the front? Good, an x and then a minus 5. Again, if I were to go through and box this out, I should end up back where I started. So if you would like to go through and complete letter D, when you factor this out, your final answer should be x minus 2 and x minus 9. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but wait, what if I wrote my parentheses backwards? What if I wrote it instead, x minus 9 times x minus 2? It doesn't matter. It still will box it out to get the same answer. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. Let's look at letter E. I'm going to kind of use some of this other space over here because I'm a little tight on space. So looking at letter E, I'm going to start by multiplying first times last. So I have x squared times negative 14. When I combine them together, I get a negative 14x squared. Watch your signs carefully because that's going to be the key. Who's my monkey in the middle? You guessed it, a positive 5x. So now when I look at my negative 14x squareds, I have a lot of different ways I can combine this together to find my answers. So looking at this, negative 14, in order to get a negative, I have to have a positive and a negative. So I'm going to write this down 2 times. I have 1x and a negative 14x. Or I could have a negative 1x and a positive 14x. Either way, these will multiply to give me negative 14. What's another way I can multiply to get it? Good. I can also do a 2x and a negative 7x. Or I could do a negative 2x and a positive 7x. So all of those are ways to get my negative 14. But now I have to combine them together to see who will give me that negative 5. So if I do 1 plus negative 14, I get negative 13x's. That doesn't give me 5. It's not an answer. If I do negative 1 plus 14, I get a positive 13x. Again, I'm looking for 5. It's not my answer. All right, go to the next one. 2x's plus negative 7x's. Oh, I'm getting closer. That gives me negative 5. I want a positive, though. That's not it. But check out my last pair here. Negative 2 plus 7 does give me a positive 5x. Ding, 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 ding. Found my factors. So when I write this in here, I have a negative 2x and I have a positive 7x. So let's double check our math here. Negative 2 times positive 7 does give me negative 14. Negative 2 plus 7 does give me a positive 5. So I can go through and group it up. So looking, I'm going to bring down my x squared. And then I'm going to ask myself, what are those two factors that I found in my x? Well, I had a negative 2x and a positive 7x. Remember that negative 14 I had circled in the end? I wrote it down. Do I have 4 terms? I sure do. So I can divide my equation in half and underline squiggle. So looking at this one, I have x squared and 2x. What do they both have in common? An x. And then going to this, dividing this out. So x times, what's x squared divided by x? Great, it's x. And then what's negative 2x divided by x? You guessed it, negative 2. You're getting the hang of this. Now let's look at the second half. My sign in the middle is a plus, so positive. And then 7 and 14, what can I divide them both by? Great job, a 7. So plus 7, and now I can write my parentheses. 7x, but I'm dividing that 7 out, so I'm left with just x. Negative 14 divided by 7 is you guessed it, negative 2. Check it out one more time. We do have parentheses that match. So the one that duplicates, I'm going to write that first, and then all that outside junk gets mushed up into my second parenthesis. I have an x, and I have a positive 7. What questions do you guys have? If you have some questions, please be sure to write them down to make sure that you understand how to do them. The key here is just watching your signs and making sure you're not losing sight of any of them. If you have any questions, like I said, write them down. Otherwise, I would like you guys to go ahead and get started on your classwork. I know some of the problems will be a little challenging. The hardest part is the X part. Really watch those signs carefully, and I think you guys can be successful. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Great job today. Bye.